Joe then takes his hat and throws it into the water. And my two thoughts were one, aw, the hat was fun. I liked the hat. And two, Joe,
Yeah.
don't throw the hat into the water for a sea
Yeah.
turtle to find it and then eat it and
Oh,
get stuck. Like, come on.
wait, hats are the same as the plastic things that hold bottles and cans together? We can't throw those in the water either. What can we throw? Your generation with your need to keep pollution out of the water.
Well, I mean,
I don't,
my second thought was that, oh, look, a shark is going to find that hat and is going to become the classiest shark in the entire ocean and run the world. So, like, I got both sides of it. I'm like, save the sea turtles, but also a classy shark. What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to Post Finale. I'm your host, Ankit Madhira. I'm an actor and a musician who hasn't seen a lot of films, so to make my friends happy and potentially provide a new perspective on some popular films, I am on a quest to change that. I'm never on this quest alone, however. This week, I am joined by the host of 1980s Now, Will Padilla. Will, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. Talk to you generally and talk to you about this movie in particular.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited in the few conversations that we've had. It's been lovely conversation, so I'm excited to delve more into just talking generally and like you said about this film. So, for anyone who's jumping in the middle, we are talking about Joe versus the Volcano. That's the film that we are discussing. And Will, you were the one that suggested this film to me. Now, what's your background with the film? Do you remember when you first saw it? Why is it one of your favorite films,
Yeah,
etc.?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I saw it when it came out in theaters. And like everyone else, and you maybe have folks watching this, I think it's a polarizing film. And one of the reasons maybe is the fact that when it was advertised, so when you saw the trailers for the film, it looked like a comedy romp adventure where Tom Hanks, who was already established as a comedic actor, just another one of these adventures he was going to go on. You know, he had already done, I think, The Burbs, and tons of films prior to this. But then when they saw it, as you know, you've probably learned by now, as much of the film as you've seen, that it's not that. It's something else. It's light. It's funny. It's romantic. But it seems to be a deeper sort of meditation on life than that. And so folks either hated it, it seems, or got it and really loved it. I loved it.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I definitely picked up that like there's a deeper meaning to the film, but at the same time, it's like it's still funny, it's still light, there's
Hmm.
still a lot of comedy elements into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have a deep meaning in a film as well. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, and it's written by John Patrick Shanley, who wrote and directed it. He was already one of my favorite playwrights at the time. So that got me really excited about seeing it. And I'll tell you something. I love this film so much, and because it became polarizing, it seemed like I met people that liked it or didn't like it. That I used it as a test for a future mate. So whenever I'd go on a date or meet somebody, hey, did you ever see Joe Versus the Volcano? What do you think about it? Oh, I hate that movie. I'm sorry, this isn't going to work out. I'm out of here. But
Honestly, fair.
yeah, and the woman I'm ultimately married to, she said she loved it. And I think we watched it like that night of our first or second date. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I have definitely laughed a lot through watching this film, but also, like, as you will understand, I've had a lot of questions about this film.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm like, what? This none of this makes sense. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
So, just so that you're caught up, and listeners, just as a reminder, because if you're listening to this as they're coming out, it's been a week. Where I'm at and what I'm guessing is happening is that Joe is going to go to Waponi Island and he is going to actually like jump in. There's going to be some type of offer, so he is going on this trip. We know that he's going to go on this trip. And I think at the end, he's going to realize that it's a misdiagnosis. He doesn't actually have a brain cloud. And so he isn't dying. And then at the end of the film, he's going to break out of his shell, become his heroic self like he used to be back when he was a firefighter. He'll end up with Dee Dee at the end of the film. I'm still not sure how she potentially comes back into the mix, but I think that he's going to end up with Dee Dee at the end of the film, and he's not going to actually end up dying. Like, the Waponis will find someone to jump into the volcano, or there's going to be some way where Joe doesn't actually have to jump in, even though he's saying that he's going to jump in. And I think he's going to, like, go all the way up to, like, the edge of the volcano and then decide not to jump in at the last minute. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is happening. I don't really know what's happening, but there's one way to find out. So why don't we jump into where we left off? Joe has just been dropped off by Marshall. Marshall has said his goodbyes, and Joe heads up to his fancy room to get ready. And the first thing I noticed was, wow, he really did buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He has 4 of those massive trunks.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you as we go here, but, you know, in the 1980s, and this film came out in 1990, so it was made in the 80s, it does seem like various aspects of this movie are almost a parody or a rejection of things in other 1980s films. Also came out in 1990 was Pretty Woman. I think it came out a few months later. But again, this idea of a shopping montage is, you know, it's in the zeitgeist. It's a tropey thing to do. But what's interesting about this one, and again, I said I'm not going to spoil anything for you, is whereas, you know, in Pretty Woman, she goes on this shopping spree, buys a bunch of these clothing, and she's having it's almost like a status play with, oh, maybe you don't know. You may not have seen Pretty Woman, Ankit. I realized.
I'm not going to lie. I haven't even heard of the film, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. I don't know how you got this far in life like that, but hey, it's probably good. You probably are cultured in other ways.
I watched a lot of Bollywood films growing up.
Oh, I love Bollywood. Okay, very good. Yeah. Well, my point was going to be in other films, there's kind of these shopping sprees that are frivolous. And Joe seems to be a lot more purposeful and important. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. It definitely didn't feel like that, but maybe something will show up later and we'll see the purpose of it. In the last episode, as we were going through the shopping spree, it didn't feel like he was buying important things, but I don't know.
Right.
So he's out, he's dining all alone, and he's drinking a martini at the bar. The first question, is it shaken or stirred?
Of course.
Stirred is the actual way to make one. I don't know why James Bond is having it shaken, but sure. I mean, like, look, when you're the best, like, assassin, I don't even know, special agent in the MI5.
Wait, you've never seen a James Bond movie?
No. I've seen James Bond movies. I'm just blanking on what he's called.
Right,
like, I've seen a good number of James Bond movies. Don't worry. Yeah. that would give you reason to just cut off the call. I wouldn't have even been mad. I would have just been like, that will.
I think Bonds has it shaking because to show he's a rule breaker. You know, he doesn't play by the rules.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a cool line, nevertheless. Yeah, right. It's a great line. So he's sitting. He does look quite sad, Joe does. And he ventures outside, sees a large group of people entering like a theater or the opera. I thought he was going to follow them. He doesn't. He's just sad and sleeping alone in the next shot. And then literally the next thing is we're on a plane. We're landing in LA. So I do appreciate that the film just moves. Like, it's like, hey, we'll show clips of his final night kind of up here in New York and in Manhattan. And then next thing, we're in LA. You don't need to see him traveling. Like, that's not going to be interesting. Let's just move on. So,
yeah. And I think, and look, I probably read into this movie way more than most people do, and maybe even more than John Patrick Shanley, the author and director, did. But I think one of the things, and even in your, and again, no spoilers, but in your predictions about the film and how you discussed this New York area, is that what Hollywood had, maybe not you because you hadn't seen as many movies, but you're still feeling it. Hollywood trained us to expect certain things, and maybe even Bollywood, and certainly Bollywood to that extent too, that certain things are just formulaic. And what I like about this film, and even that New York scene, is that he doesn't do these things. Like, Marshall doesn't have dinner with them. That would seem like a no-brainer, like a setup. I'm having dinner with my family. Oh, Joe's there in the next scene. No, he doesn't follow people. So he doesn't. It seems like throughout this film, they, sort of, what do they call it? Like, upend tropes, and probably purposefully so, I think.
Very interesting. Yeah, I do appreciate that. Like, they don't necessarily follow the tropes. It keeps you on your toes as you're watching the film. Because, like, as a first time viewer, I'm like, oh, this is probably what's going to happen. Nope.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wrong about
Mm-hmm.
this. Like, this is probably what's going to happen. Nope. And, like, listeners to the show understand that I'm terrible at predicting what's going to happen in the
Oh.
film. But at the same time, like, there are certain tropes that, like, I understand. And also, like, I do work in the industry. So, like, there are things, and people have asked me multiple times, like, how did you become an actor and not seen anything? And I'm like, I don't know. I just started doing it. I enjoyed it, so I kept doing it. But no part of me was ever like, I need to watch the films. So,
Well,
I'm catching up. But also, to
yeah.
your point of you reading way too much into this film, you'll see in a moment, I definitely do the same. So,
Okay.
he gets off the plane. There's a lady there with bright red hair. She's wearing a yellow dress and holding a bright yellow sign with the name Joseph Banks written on it. Now, what's very interesting is if you look at the sign, each of the letters has a different thing inside of the letter. So the J has little like volcanoes or triangles in it. The O
Right.
has palm trees. The S, I think it's ducks. It was hard to tell. It
Yes.
wasn't very clear. E was small little dots. The P was I have it was splotches. That's the word that I wrote down. I'm like, what is the P? P is splotches. H has little stars in it. And then so that's the first name. And then you get Banks, which is B has like dogs or goats. A has small scattered dots. N has very large green dots. K has a red and white checkerboard inside of it with very small checkers. And S is blue like the water.
Right.
I don't know what any of that means, but I found it very interesting.
Yeah. Now, wow, that's wonderful. And so what you picked up on, at least in part, is there's these, and again, this movie is like almost borderline fantasy, like magical, sort of mystical. But I'm sure you've caught by now, and maybe in the first half of discussion, is that there's some recurring motifs, including imagery of volcanoes, of course, and among those, there was also ducks. Ducks keep appearing as well. And of course, the lightning bolt shape, which keeps showing up as the path on the way to the office. It's the logo for the company. It was the cut in his wall in his apartment. His sad apartment is shaped like that same lightning bolt. So there are these motifs that were planted that are repeated, and you found some in the letters there. Yeah, the volcanoes and the ducks, at least in particular.
Yeah, I've noticed the ducks a few times. Which one had the little lightning bolts on it?
So the lightning bolt is the logo for the company he works for.
Right, and then
That
it was
same,
also in his apartment
yep,
as
and it's
well.
also the shape of the path that they walk to work every day.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
In the opening credits.
yeah, at the beginning, yep. And
Okay.
that may be as many as you've seen so far as the lightning bolt. We're going to see it again, but
Okay.
yeah, so far yep,
Currently, that's all
yeah,
we've got. All right, we'll keep our eyes open because I don't think I noticed it. So I'm looking forward to you telling me where it is.
yeah. There's
So
literally a blink and you miss it one, which is fantastic. But I'll
there
tell
we
you when we
go.
get there. Yeah.
Sounds good. So we learn that this lady is the daughter of the guy who hired him. This is Angelica Granamore. And I was like, is this the same actress as Dee Dee? I'm pretty sure it's the same actress as Dee Dee. Still wasn't 100% sure, but I was like, I'm pretty confident here. Like, I can kind of tell a face. So
Do you know now?
yeah, no. Spoiler alert. I do know that it's the same
Okay.
actress. Uh, we'll get to that because I
Okay.
had thoughts. Um,
Yeah.
so she doesn't know why Joe has been hired, and Joe is apparently not to tell her because she is a flibberty gyp.
Yes.
Fantastic word, just
Yes.
beautiful. So they grab a taxi. It is Neil's whole taxi. Neil has his little face plastered onto the side of it. He is a man with a very large forehead, as depicted by this picture, and a beautiful beard and some spectacles. My bad. The taxi's just for the luggage. Joe and Angelica are in a red convertible.
Yeah. Yeah. The luggage gets its own ride. Yeah. And luggage is fantastic, by the way. I mean, when that guy, in the earlier half of the film shows it to him, oh, I want that luggage.
He is. I want that luggage. I want that man to sell me the luggage.
Yes.
Like,
I'd buy anything
that's
from
who
him
I
too.
want. He has found his niche. and he has found what he loves and he has made it his job. And you could like get that. So I don't know who plays the luggage salesman in the film, but
Yeah.
fantastic job to that actor. He nailed that role. I loved it.
Yeah, I love Patricia's car. I think I'm sorry, Angelica's car even matches her too, her color
Her
and
red
style.
hair. Yeah.
And I
Definitely
think
does.
the way she's put together again is another very sort of 80s like trope, this, and how we'll see her portrayed as well, that they kind of, subvert a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, it gave me like 80s vibes in her clothing and like her
Yeah.
car and everything. Like it definitely felt 80s in just viewing it. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But Joe tells her that LA looks fake. He likes it.
But he likes it, yeah.
I have not been to LA in a very long time, so I don't really know how it may have changed since the last time I was there, which was close to, I think, almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is when he makes that comment, they're driving down, it looks like alongside the ocean there, right on the right is there. So all he's seeing is green. He's seeing nature. But when you think of that compared to his life prior, living in Staten Island, that office with the fluorescent lights, everything he's been in has been man-made. So to him, what appears fake is nature.
Which is interesting because for me growing up, just, in general, and I grew up in the Seattle area, nature was everywhere.
Yep.
And so for me, nature looks natural and buildings are like man-made and fake. And it's like, all right, like, great. Like, even when I'm living in London, there are times where I'm like, I just want to go to a park because it gives me a semblance of like nature. There is something more than a concrete jungle in the world. But yeah, I didn't pick up on that.
And it's the opposite for me. I grew up in a big city in New Jersey, and I was really sort of like mistrusting or distrustful of countries, like our country areas, So like, even suburbs seemed a little scary to me. Yeah, so the wide open fields were like, what is this? When you grow up in a city with asphalt,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I grew up in suburbs of big cities. So if we didn't have to go to the big city, we just never did. But that's just how it goes sometimes. So Angelica says that it's a great town. It stinks, but it's a great town. And I love the fact that it's kind of like that trope of like, if you live there and you've lived there for long enough, you're allowed to make fun of it. But if you haven't lived there for long enough, you don't get to make fun of the place.
Yeah, right.
Like,
yeah.
It's like, it's okay if we make fun of it, but you can't make fun of it.
Yeah.
So
and also like she's accepting of all of its issues. Like it stinks, but like she's been there so long, I get it. I get why it stinks, and it's part of her.
Yeah, it's, it stinks, but we still love it.
Yeah.
So they drive off, they go somewhere for lunch. They get sea scalps with 3 different caviars, and they also get Dungeness crabs.
Yeah.
And then the pepper guy comes by with the largest pepper grinder I have ever seen. This thing is massive. This thing is like, I'm 5'5", and I feel like this thing is giving me a run for my money in terms of height. Like it is a proper two-hander.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I've seen pepper grinders that are big at some of these fancy places, but you're right. You wonder if the props built it specifically to almost show the sort of excess, because, LA, and we'll learn about Angelica, her life is all excess, and what better way to say it than a giant, almost requires 2 people to grind it, pepper grinder. Yeah.
I think it's perfect. I would change nothing. I saw it and was like, yes, I'm here for it. Let's go. That's
I would love to have it.
I need.
When you have that at your house and you're like, you want any pepper? You would do? And then you go in in a closet and take it out. No, I'm good. I don't want the pepper.
Well, like, I can just imagine that, like, one little thing and your entire dish is just now pepper, and it's like, enjoy. Yeah. And like,
hope you like pepper.
That's what I want to bring to England and the British and be like, hi, this is spice.
Yeah.
This is
slowly
flavor.
Work it in. You start with black pepper. And you work them up the chain, yeah.
Yeah. That's what we do. So it is fantastic. And Angelica asks Joe what the matter is, and she says, "Look, the crabs look a little monstrous, but they're good little monsters." And then she proceeds to stab the crab with such force that, like, if you were to hit a table that hard, the table might break.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. That's a little, maybe it's just a little character quirky thing. I almost expected her to pick it up and eat it with her mouth, which was Tom Hanks is in the movie Splash, a few years earlier, where Daryl Hannah, the mermaid character, just eats a lobster through the shell and everything. She just devours it at a fancy restaurant. I thought that would have been a nice callback, but yeah, no, she smashes this crab with a hammer.
Fair enough. I mean, hey, I put it up to just she's quirky, cool. Like, we're getting a bit more character development
Yeah.
through this. So she asks Joe, "What did you do before signing with Daddy?" Joe explains that he was an advertising librarian for a medical supply company. And Angelica's just like, "I have no response to that." Perfect. Because I also wouldn't have a response to that.
After this movie came out and I heard that, I was like, oh, we can do that in conversations. I started using it all the time.
I'm not going to lie.
If I didn't.
Yeah. I'm about to. Yeah. Because I didn't realize this is allowed.
Yeah. And it's got to be, and it's such an honest moment, right? I mean, she could try to make small talk, but no, I really have nothing to say about that.
It's like, okay, cool. Like, that's what she did. I have nothing to contribute. So Joe asks what Angelica does. She is a painter and a poet, another person of artistic values. And Joe's fascinated by this because, of his previous job, he was stuck in a tiny room. And one of her paintings is on the wall. It's kind of like a comic strip painting is the best way to kind of describe it, I would say. And you have a redhead and someone who looks exactly like Joe sitting in a car asking, "Is this a real scene?" And the next panel is them driving further. There's like some surrealist hills and some cool trees and stuff. And the person driving, who I'm assuming is Angelica, says, "This is a real scene." And then the last panel is that classic picture of people in a parked car overlooking LA.
Right.
Now, I know that you grew up on the East Coast and that you're from the East Coast and you still live there. Do you know if people actually do this in LA?
You're right. I don't know. I think they do, but I don't know for sure. I've been to LA many times. I've never done it. But in so many films, yeah, it's like the most romantic thing to do is to have that look over there. I can't remember the name of the park either, but yeah, to do that.
It's like in every film, TV show, kind of like if you're in LA, if you're in Southern California, you have to do it. And I'm just like, how common is it for people to actually do this? And the other thing is, if it is this common, why are there never any other people there? Why is it always just completely quiet? Are you going at like 2:30 in the morning? Like, that's just creepy at that point. Like, that's not okay. Yeah. Like, especially if you don't know the person, right? Like, it's one thing if you are, in a 6-year relationship and you know the person very, very well, and you're like, "Hey, let's go for a drive," and it's like midnight and you're like, "Let's go, for a drive," because that's what you do, and you end up at this park. Fine. She's met this person earlier today. Like, what?
Right. And we know she's good with a hammer. So maybe that was could have been foreshadowing.
I don't know. Because
she doesn't murder him, though. Yeah.
The scene then transitions, and it is a beautiful transition, beautifully, beautifully done, because you see the picture of these people looking out over the city, and then it transitions into Angelica and Joe being the ones sitting in the car overlooking the city, and Angelica saying that you have to understand something about art. It comes from some place, which is true. All art comes from something. It stems from somewhere, whether it's a feeling, whether it's, inspiration because you see something and you're like, I want to do something there. Like, everything stems from something.
Yeah. And that art picture that you're referring to at the 3 panels, it's a sort of a parody or homage to an artist that's how their paintings were. I can't remember his name offhand, but that was, I won't say they were popular necessarily at the time, but it's a popular style that they were trying to emulate with her art.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah. Wasn't completely sure. I've never run across it before, but wonderful. So Joe says that it looks like they're looking down upon the stars, and Angelica asks if he would like to hear one of her poems. And he does, so we recite the poem. Long ago, the delicate tangles of his hair covered the emptiness of my hands. That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
the entire poem, and my initial reaction was, that's a poem.
Oh, really? Oh, no. I think that was probably my reaction the first time I saw it. And now I've seen it so many times, this film. And maybe it was even the last time I saw it, I thought that. But now I was like, wow, that's actually kind of beautiful. So much is conveyed in that imagery, right? That she had an empty hand. There was someone there that was fulfilling it. And now that person's obviously gone. So now she's alone again. But yeah, I don't know. I see what you mean. And obviously that's meant to be the joke that it's a garbage poem.
Yeah. Like the joke landed. And I do agree with you. Like looking back at it, going through it again, it's like, yeah, no, there is something there, and there is a deeper meaning to it. But at the same time, like usually when I think poem, there's at least like 4 lines or maybe like a haiku, like
Something rhymes, yeah.
something like there's some type of structure, not 2 sentences put together. Like
Yeah.
that's not usually my idea of a poem, but
A
hey,
run-on sentence.
yeah, not a run-on sentence. I'm not a poet, so if there are any poets out there, let me know if this technically does classify as a poem, because I don't know. Not
Yeah, I
sure.
think anything could be a poem. I think anything could be a poem. I think this movie is sort of a poem in that sense. But yeah, and Joe doesn't get it either because she says, "You want me to say it again?" And he almost didn't realize it was over, so she does repeat it for him.
Yeah, and when she repeats it, she stops at emptiness, which I found very interesting. And
Yeah.
Joe clocks this as well, asks what's wrong, and Angelica just hits him with, "Have you ever thought about killing yourself?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Great segue. I
Yeah,
like that she doesn't really have a filter. She just says honestly what's on her mind.
that's the flibbit or gibbet of her.
Okay.
Yeah, she's just very talkative and open in that way, at least.
There we
Seems
go.
very closed off in other ways, but yeah.
Yeah.
She does seem to just say what's on her mind. And this is something that, the film examines over and again, right? It's about mortality. So it's interesting that in this, and if you think about it, Joe doesn't, his response isn't, yes, I have thought about killing myself. In fact, that's what I'm going to do on this trip for your father. He doesn't say that. He keeps it all to himself, and instead he talks to her about, essentially talks her out of that notion of killing yourself and instead living a life.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much says, like, hey, because some things take care of themselves. They're not your job, maybe not even your business.
Right.
Which I think is a beautiful line. Like, and that's not just about necessarily death, it's about other things in life too. Like, sometimes you don't have the control that you wish that you would have. But, you know, it'll work out. My grandmother has a saying that anything that happens to us happens for our own good. We don't
Mm.
necessarily know what that is in the moment. We don't necessarily know what that is 5 years from now. But maybe you look back at a moment in your life 20 years later in the future, look back at a moment and you're like, you know what? That was good because, if that didn't happen, something else wouldn't have happened, which would have led to something else. So, like, you know, so it's kind of emulating the same thing of like, you don't always necessarily know, and some things aren't meant for you to be able to take control over.
Yeah. And Joe has the perspective now, to your point, of being able to say that, thinking that he's dying of this disease, but having to sort of just, I guess he's taking power back from it because he's decided how his life is going to end in the most courageous way possible. But in that sense, like you're saying, he's trying to find good out of something and the bad hand that he's been dealt.
Yeah, definitely. So Joe says that he likes the poem, and Angelica says that, I'm a grown woman and I'm living off of daddy's money. And the restaurant that they were in that has her painting, it's actually her father's restaurant. And I was just like, well, like in a way, I am glad that they're also showing this because, you have that common trope of the like daughters or the sons just living off of dad's money or mom's money, and it's like, the parent has done the work to like, make it, and then the kids just live off of their riches. But I'm kind of glad that it's like, she kind of wants to be something on her own. She doesn't want to just be dependent on dad the entire time, and she kind of feels like, like I haven't achieved anything myself.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. And that's usually a side to this that we don't see. And it's something we're going to see in her half sister and some scenes coming up where we get a little more, maybe, a different angle or different look at it. But yeah, she's definitely seems to be suffering as a result of the fact that she's still tethered to her father in this way.
Yeah. And I just really liked that they included that it's like, hey, like people don't always necessarily, even though they might come from money and they might, be well off, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not fighting their own demons that you just don't know of. It might not be money related, but there are demons that they are fighting themselves. So,
Yeah, and I wonder what I don't know what to make of the fact that so part of the message of this film I think ultimately seems to be about living your best life, whatever that means to you. Going for it, not being afraid, not letting certainly the fear of death keeping you immobilized, but instead of making a more direct path towards whatever goal you want to achieve. And she is a poet and an artist, and it seems like that would have been something, it's a lot of stuff that artsy folks would love to pursue, but they can't afford to do that. But she can, and it still makes her miserable. It's just interesting.
it is very interesting. So, Joe, you know, says that if there's a choice of killing yourself and doing something you're scared of doing, why not take the leap? And
Right.
for Angelica, the leap is to stop taking dad's money and to leave LA. So this is where I was like, is Angelica going on this trip with him? Am I
Yeah.
wrong? Is he gonna end up with Angelica instead of Dee Dee? I'm still thinking he's ending up with Dee Dee, but also I'm pretty sure it's the same actress. So I'm feeling less confident at this moment in the film. Obviously,
Yeah.
like I said, like I now know that it is the same actress. And you know, I was like, I'm feeling less and less confident about my Dee Dee guess, but maybe Angelica's going with him. So this is kind of where I'm like updating my guess here, going, all right, Angelica is going on this trip with him. Dee Dee's out of the picture.
Yeah.
Angelica's going to be the one he's going to help her break free as well. And that's going to help Joe realize, like, no, if she can take this massive leap, then I can take the leap of not killing myself, kind of deal. So that's what I think is kind of happening a little bit now, is that by helping Angelica, he's going to be able to help himself. I do still think the entire ending is going to be the same. Like, he's not actually going to jump into the volcano. He's going to find a way to get out of it. The Waponis will send somebody else in, and Joe is going to be perfectly fine and go get to live his life with, I guess, now Angelica instead of Dee Dee, because Dee Dee seems gone.
Right.
So Joe tells her that, what she is scared of doing, why not do it and just see what happens? And so Angelica doesn't respond to this, just says, you must be tired. And Joe's like, I don't mind talking to you, but Angelica does. And the reason is that she's like, it's just one of those typical conversations where we're all open and sharing our thoughts, and it's all bullshit and a lie, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Mm.
Which is
Yeah.
very interesting. Joe then says that he doesn't know her, he doesn't know anybody, but he can see that she is angry. And I appreciate that he's like, look, I don't really know who you are, but like, this is what I'm getting from you.
Yeah.
So, we're figuring out this conversation. I don't necessarily know you. I met you this morning. So there's not a whole lot going on here. So,
It's almost a great sort of lesson in just empathy and in having a conversation with somebody, like I don't know your deal. I don't like you to your point. You don't know what people are going through, but I can tell you're at least upset, and I'm here and I'm willing to listen and hear about what's going on. And she's not ready to share, but neither is he, because he's got his secret he's keeping as well.
right,
But it
neither
is,
is ready to open up to the other. But it's just the fact that, like, hey, if you want to open up, I have no idea what you're going through. I don't understand what you're going through, but it's okay. Like, I'm here for you if you need it, kind of deal. Not saying, you're not forcing anything upon anybody. It's just there's a voice to listen if needed. So Joe says that he only has so much time. He wants to use it well. And so he's here talking to her. He doesn't want to throw that away. Again, she doesn't have a response. Perfect. I'm taking this. I'm using it when I don't have a response. And Joe says, all right, maybe you should take me back to the hotel. And they get back to the hotel. Joe gets out of the car. Angelica offers to come up with him. And Joe politely declines. And he's like, no, that's okay. Thank you. Angelica asks to meet him for breakfast. She is supposed to get him to the boat by 10, but they can meet for breakfast, and Joe agrees. So Angelica drives off, and Joe heads off to the hotel and turns away, though he doesn't head inside of the hotel, and he heads to the beach instead. And there he just sits down and just looks at the ocean. And he stays there all night long until the sun starts to rise.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting contrast to, you mentioned in the hotel in New York, he goes to this fancy hotel that, Green and Moore set up for him, obviously. He's in this giant suite. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. But ultimately, we have this shot of him in bed, alone, sad. And the contrast, it seems like here, he's rejecting that idea. I know that, this rich guy set up all this luxury for me for my last moments of life. I don't want that, actually. I don't feel as comfortable with that as I do in this new thing I'm discovering, which is nature and, the world. And so he'd rather sit, even if it's alone, out in the world itself, instead of being, amongst luxury. And it's a different kind of solitude, I guess, to be able to choose to be on a beach and an ocean and watch the sunrise versus being in a luxury suite.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, me personally, I would rather be out in nature and, camping and stuff like that. Like, don't get me wrong, like a luxury suite is nice and stuff. I would guess. I don't know. I've never been in one. I say this like I've been in one. It's never happened.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. Every other weekend. What are you talking about? Of course, like, I travel like royalty, not sitting in economy class with enough legroom for me, but not anyone that's taller than me. So he sits there all night, and the next morning we're at breakfast, and we see another picture, and this one is of the sun setting over the ocean, and it has a smile on his face. It's very cute. And Joe says that the painting is terrific, and Angelica apologizes for being grotesque last night. Another fantastic word. They're just like, look, if the children are watching this, we need to sprinkle in some vocabulary words for them.
Right.
And for the adults as well, have some better vocabulary. Yeah. Get you prepped. It's like, you were a senior in high school. You're about to take your SATs. Go.
Which, and the face in that image, that's him.
I didn't clock that. I just clocked that it was a face. Very interesting. I like that. Yeah. I like that, though. It means that he had an impact on Angelica. So
yeah, and that's a much better piece of art, I think, than that comic strip thing that you pointed out. I think it seems more, it's watercolor and it's more, I don't know, organic, and it feels closer to something true.
I really liked it.
That comic, yeah.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Like, it was just done on a very simple piece of paper, just like you said, watercolors, and it was just nice and simple, but I really enjoyed it. It was something that would definitely be fridge worthy at minimum.
Will it get a premium magnet?
Oh, well, yeah. It gets the good magnet. It gets the good magnet. Right. So Angelica says that she is disappointed in him. We hear a cat meow very loudly in the background, and my brain went, I don't see a cat, but I wonder if we will. Because why did we hear the cat so specifically that it was such a loud meow? And they left it in between her line and Joe's next line. So why is the cat important? Spoiler alert, we never see the cat, and I was upset we never see the cat.
Yeah, hashtag where's the cat? I didn't catch that. Wow, huh? It's while they're still in the restaurant talking.
Yeah. It's in that scene, and you just hear a meow, or at least I thought it was a meow.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of an odd place to hear a cat too, right? In a restaurant,
which is why I thought, like, okay, why is there a cat? This is not where I would assume. Is it a cat cafe? If so, I don't see any cats. And like, if it is, that hasn't been established. So why am I
Right.
hearing a cat? Like you said, hashtag where's the cat?
I gotta go back and check that out.
Yeah. See, now I've
I noticed.
implemented this into your brain.
Yeah.
This is what I notice.
That's the meaning of the cat. Yeah.
So Angelica asks why Daddy hired Joe. Joe says that it's complicated. So Angelica's like, fine, don't tell me, but I'm sure Patricia knows. Patricia is Angelica's half sister, and she is the one sailing Joe to the island. Joe is surprised by this, and Angelica is surprised that, Daddy didn't tell him. And she says that, you know what, Daddy loves his secrets almost as much as he loves money.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes you got to create your own entertainment. And I feel like this is her father's way of doing so.
How do you mean?
Like,
By sending.
just like, he's just like, this will be fun if, like, the sisters don't know what's going on, but then, like, they have to piece it together. Like, it's a jigsaw puzzle. Like, we find out, and this isn't, like, a spoiler, but we do find out that, like, he's not the most, like, around dad. He's not always around,
Right.
and he is kind of absent from his daughter's lives. So there is that to it. But then at the same time, like, I didn't know that at this point. So I was like, I don't know, maybe the dad's just having some fun of like, let's not tell them what's happening.
Right.
So
or pit them against each other by one knows a little more than the other knows, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I just felt like he was like, let's stir the pot. We don't know the relationship between the sisters yet either. So Angelica asks why he's dressed like Jungle Jim. Am I missing a reference here?
Jungle Jim, I think, is a character from something really old.
Okay.
I don't remember, maybe 1940 serials or something like that. Short films.
Sure.
I'm not positive. I've heard that expression certainly many times.
Cool.
I think it's interesting that she, the way she dresses almost seems like a costume itself, and it really is a costume, but she dresses so specifically, kind of over the top. And you said, like, kind of got this 80s, like, I don't know, Madonna vibe or something, the way she's got this kind of bustier top. And he has a costume on of sorts as well. And that she points it out, like, what is this character you're adopting? And the way he reacts, like, well, is this not right? I don't know. I think there's something to be said there about how she can dress. It looks really put on and feel like that's fine. But he adopts something that may be actually practical. And to her, it's like, what is this? Why are you wearing a, Halloween costume? I don't know what it means, right? But
I don't know. But to me, I was like, I could tell that I was missing some type of reference to something. Because for me, Jungle Gyms meant monkey bars.
And like, I see. Yeah. No. Yeah, they meant Jim, like, J-I-M, like James.
Yeah. And like, I understand like what they meant by like, Jungle Gym. And also like I had the subtitles
context
on.
Clues?
So like, I put it together. I used my brain. But like, also I was like, I just thought it would be funny if I mentioned monkey bars. Cause I'm like, this is my context for what we would call jungle gyms. But like, we never called anything else a jungle gym. So, yeah. So Joe says, he can change if it is needed. And he puts on his hat and asks if it is inappropriate for the boat. Angelica laughs a bit on the inside, but like holds it in. She doesn't like go full on. And she's like, no, it's fine. And she then suddenly realizes that they have to leave. And she has a guy dropping off Joe's trunks at the marina who may or may not have understood her directions.
Right.
So they head off.
It does seem like some of the stuff in this movie, it's just gags, right? It's for all the trying to read into things. Some things are just funny. And you've got Tom Hanks here who's funny. He puts the hat on, his ear folds over. He just looks ridiculous. And I think, some stuff's just straight up goofy on purpose.
It's just goofy on purpose. And I like that even though the film kind of like takes itself seriously, at the same time, it's not afraid to just be goofy. Like, and I think the reason that it works so well is kind of what we learn as actors is that, you need to be truthful. So like Tom Hanks does a beautiful job of this where like he knows that what he's doing is goofy and silly in putting on the hat. But he is so sincere in putting on that hat that it lets the audience laugh. Because for us, it's just like, oh, great. Like, that's just who Joe is. And, like, that's why
Oh
Tom
yeah.
Hanks is one of the best actors of the recent times, I guess. I don't know. He might even be considered one of the best actors of all time. I don't know where he ranks on people's lists. I'm not one to say.
Yeah. Well, he's certainly been doing
So,
it for 40 plus years now. And yeah, you're right. He's got that skill of playing whatever it is sincerely that makes it just lovable and honest.
yeah. And to be said, that doesn't mean that every single one of his films is a massive hit by any means.
Oh yeah.
But
No.
I
No.
think every single one of his roles, he does very well. Like, he gives it his all. So before we get to the marina and we meet people and new people, we're gonna take a quick break for an intermission, and then we'll jump right back in. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale. I hope you are all enjoying this episode, and if you want to gain access to more bonus content, like access to my notes and access to some of the tier lists that I make and help suggest films and things like that, all of that can be done over at our Patreon, and that can be found at patreon.com/coopforge. So that's patreon.com/CO_OPFORGE. Signing up for any of the tiers gets you different types of bonus content depending on the tier that you sign up for, and a shout out here on the show for every patron that signs up. It really means the world to us, and it helps us grow this show and helps us be able to put the money back into this show to make it a better experience for you, the listeners. That is our entire goal here at Co-op Forge. So thank you all so much if you are considering doing this. Now, if you want to help the show in a non-monetary way, that is fantastic as well. You can do so by just talking about us and sharing it with a friend. Just reach out to a friend and be like, hey, you love movies, or hey, you need an excuse to watch more movies. Check out this show called Post Finale. The host is silly, he's an actor, he's confused most of the time, gets a lot of guesses wrong, but overall it's a lovely time and some interesting discussions about some iconic films. I think you'll really enjoy it. It really does help. And be sure to talk about us on social media and follow us on social media. That really helps out a lot as well. If you're looking for the show, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Post Finale Pod. And then you can also find us at Co-op Forge on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And that's at Co-op Forge at CO_OPFORGE. And we post content not just from Post Finale, but from the other shows here on Co-op Forge as well. So that includes Flip the Scripts, and that includes Seattle Across the Pond. So be sure to follow both of those channels. Again, it's at Post Finale Pod and at Co-op Forge, CO_OPFORGE. But just thank you so much for listening to this episode. Wherever you are, if you're enjoying the episode, if you're listening on YouTube, please please hit subscribe. It really does help us out. If you're listening on a podcast app, that's great as well. It doesn't matter to us where you're listening. We're just so thankful that you're listening. But if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating. It really does help us out. Please leave a review and hit that follow button. You can also turn on notifications both on YouTube and on the podcast apps just to be notified when new episodes come out. It really does mean a lot that you are all listening to these episodes, and thank you all so much. So let's get back to the episode without further ado. So we're at the marina and we see a boat and we meet Patricia, the half-sister. And she starts calling Joe Felix, saying, the outfit is wearing him. And again, I was like, is this all the same actress? Did they really only have the budget to cast one female actress for this entire film? I mean, fair play if they did. I don't know what the budget is because I always look that up after I finish the film. I look up the ratings and everything, so we'll go over that in the next episode. But I always look that up at the end just to avoid spoilers. But I was like, okay, what? Like, why did they only cast one person? But then also at the same time, I was like, she does great. I'm not upset by this fact. Like, she plays all three of these female characters very differently and very well. So, like, fair play, Meg Ryan, correct?
Yeah. And by this time, she is America's sweetheart. So if you could only afford one actor, it would be she'd be the one, and probably would have been pricey by then because she was already in When Harry Met Sally. I'm pretty sure she was in Inner Space. She was America's sweetheart by the time. She was the Reese Witherspoon before Reese Witherspoon was Reese Witherspoon in the, I don't know, she's not in Vogue anymore, but whenever that was. And I agree with you, great performance. And I think what we'll notice, and maybe we should talk about this a little later, is how each of the women she played is kind of an evolution, an evolution. There's sort of a through line. And I think maybe that's why it was important to have the same actor play that character, because, some little things sort of change from person to person. And it was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember. But yeah, she's fantastic in that role, I think.
She's incredible in all three. Like, she does a fantastic job. Yeah. So completely makes sense. You got Tom Hanks on one end, you have Meg Ryan on the other. Great. There's the budget. We'll figure everything else out.
Right. And you may not know because you haven't seen a lot of movies. They go on to make at least 2, maybe 3 other films together.
They're also the 2 in Sleepless in Seattle, right?
That's right. Yep.
Cool.
And You've Got Mail, and I think there may be one other, but it's at least those 2 others.
So I know about Sleepless in Seattle. I know You've Got Mail had Meg Ryan. I didn't know it also had Tom Hanks. I haven't seen either of them. I've been to the Boathouse, or I've seen the Boathouse, where they filmed Sleepless in Seattle. Oh, but okay. I haven't seen the film.
Wow, and you're from Seattle. Goodness gracious.
Oh, yeah. I'm a disappointment. It's okay.
Yeah. You're a disappointment to the city.
There's a reason this show exists.
Is this why you've been traveling around living in different places?
Yeah, I've been trying to...
ran you out of town.
Yeah, I've had to leave. I left when I was 18. I had 5 years there. And they were like, all right, we've had enough of him. He doesn't know anything. Yeah. He's not willing to catch up on our cultural significance in Hollywood and whatnot. So get out. So they shipped me off to Portland. They were like, go down to the smaller city that's quirky. So went down there, then I got run out of there by COVID. And so I fled to a different country altogether. So there we go.
And you're shouting the whole time, I've seen the Boathouse!
100%. Yeah, care. No, but nobody cared. Nobody cares. Yeah. So, at some point, I'm sure I've got to do that film. Mm-hmm. I want to be let back in. Mm-hmm. So, Joe asks why she's calling him Felix, and Patricia's just like, because I want to. Fair enough, Patricia. You do you. She is a strong woman. She don't need permission to call him Felix. The sisters both then simultaneously ask if they know where Daddy is, and Patricia explains that they never know where Dad is, and they always assume that the other one may know. So this confirmed my theory a little bit of like the dad likes to just like give little pieces of information and see if they can put the puzzles together. So...
And me reading too much into this again. She calls him Felix. She can call him any other name. John Patrick Shanley could write any other name. You call it George. But Felix, I believe, like if you think about the Latin root of Felix, is luck. And so she's calling him Lucky, which we know he turns out to be. Now, of course, he makes certain decisions and moves forward in the direction of his, sort of goal, this volcano. But he does have a little bit of luck that helps him. And maybe it's because he's brave enough to follow his dream, which is, kill himself in a volcano. But luck does play a part, as we'll see.
Okay, yeah. Until you said that Felix means luck in Latin, or like the root is luck, I didn't clock that. But the moment you said that, I was like, yep, that makes sense. That's why Felix Felicis is called Felix Felicis in Harry Potter. And so, there you go. So we then... that the dad, it's always phone calls, it's telegrams, it's something like this. And Angelica says Patricia's in a rotten mood, and Patricia says, yeah, it's the sunshine, it gets me down. I like Patricia. She's funny, and I'm here for it. I hope if Angelica doesn't stick around, I at least hope Patricia sticks around for the rest of the film. So, I'd be okay with that.
You think she was being sarcastic with her sister, or does she really mean that she has the sunshine is upsetting to her for some reason.
I think at this point in the film, the sunshine is legitimately upsetting to her.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
that's possible.
At this
too.
point in the film, I think it is truly like she's just over it. She's like, like this, here we go. And we learn a little bit of why she's being like this shortly.
Right.
So Angelica asks where they're going. Patricia says that Dad told me not to tell you. And it goes with her theory that power makes Angelica paranoid. I didn't really understand this. Do you know kind of like what her theory is? Because like it's never elaborated on either.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as she's referring to her dad, and the fact that he's got so much power has made him paranoid, so he doesn't tell even his children what he's up to because he's scared that somehow it can come back and hurt him.
Okay.
So that's why he doesn't tell them anything.
Sure, that makes sense. So then Patricia tells Felix that get ready to heave. Joe is fed up by this, and he says, "My name is Joseph or Joe."
Joe.
And she's like, "Well, all right, Joe, get ready. We're leaving." Good for Joe. He stood up for himself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Joe says goodbye to Angelica. She notices that he is shaking, and Joe gives her a kiss on the cheek and heads off. So I'm wrong again. Angelica ain't the girl, because Angelica watches them leave on the boat, and Joe waves to her. So maybe now Patricia's the girl? I feel like he's ending up with a girl. Like, I don't know why. This just feels right. It feels like he's ending up with a girl. I've been wrong twice. I'd be fascinated if another one gets introduced. So I'm going with Patricia now.
Well, it's a very Hollywood ending or a Bollywood thing for the two romantic for a couple to get together by the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you would suspect that. Yeah.
I'm suspecting that it's gonna happen. I've just been wrong on who the girl is gonna be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, warning. They keep subverting these sort of tropes. So
this is why I don't feel confident. Yeah. Like, I have zero confidence in this actually being the case. So we'll find out. So Joe then takes his hat and throws it into the water. And my two thoughts were, one, the hat was fun. I liked the hat. And two, Joe, don't throw the hat into the water for a sea turtle to find it and then eat it and get stuck. Like, come on.
Wait, hats are the same as the plastic things that hold bottles and cans together? We can't throw those in the water either. What can we throw? Your generation with your need to keep pollution out of the water.
Well, I mean, my second thought was that, look, a shark is going to find that hat and is going to become the classiest shark in the entire ocean and run the world. So, like, I got both sides of it. I'm like, save the sea turtles, but also a classy shark.
I want to see that shark.
I do too.
I want to see Classy Shark. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that'd be great if it turned into a completely different movie and Classy Shark's now hunting him down for the rest of the outfit.
Fantastic. It's like, all right, great. I've gotten the hat, but I can't get approval from the other sharks because I don't have the rest of the outfit. Right. I need the rest of the outfit to get around my fins and get on my tail so that they will respect me and take me seriously. Where are you, Joe? Yes. And maybe it's the one that we see later. That's all I'll say.
Okay, yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, I wish that shark had the hat on it now. Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
So they head off, and we see a beautiful sailing montage. And I wanted to point this out. This is the first time that I've really noticed it. But a beautiful score underlaying these montages. Just beautiful music being written here. So, yeah. Boat, it's now time for fancy dinner. Patricia, sorry, in my notes I have her down as Pat, but Patricia explains that they eat well here on the Tweedledee. So my first thought was, is there another boat called Tweedledum where they do not eat as well?
It's fast food all around.
Yeah. It's like, here we have a 3-course meal. There you get a pea. A singular
Jared, hey, don't hog that pea. Everyone has to eat from that pea.
Yeah, I mean, there are 5 people on this ship. You're gonna hog that pea? Wait, 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 people on this ship. You're gonna hog the pea? How dare you? So Patricia says, we're going to Waponi Woo, and asks why. Joe is surprised that she doesn't know the reason why. And I just go, well, that is a beautiful green screen behind them for the sunset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I was like, honestly, I respect it. I felt I don't know what the budget is, but like at this point I was like, it definitely feels like, it's a low budget film. They don't probably have the biggest budget to work with, but it's still a quality film. I'm enjoying this film, and it goes to show you that a budget doesn't always equal good. It's the writing and the performances that equal good. Like, you don't have to have a large budget to have a good film.
Yeah, and that all that may be true. I don't disagree with you, but I do think also in those moments, because there's a few of them like that where they're green screening it or they're clearly on a set and it's a backdrop that's painted or something that makes it more, I don't know, surreal or fantastical, and in that sense, and sometimes makes it more romantic. I think. And there's some scenes coming up that I think sort of speak to that.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like it works. For this film, it works being on a set, kind of having the backdrop and having it be a green screen. It doesn't necessarily work for every film, but for this one especially, I do feel
Yeah.
like it does work well. So, Patricia only knows a few things about Waponi Woo. She knows that it means little island with big volcano, and the people, the Waponis, like orange soda. And my question was like, how do you know this fact? Joe has the same thought as me, because I hit pause, wrote that sentence, hit play, and Joe was like, how do you know this? I was like, aha. And she pulls out a book and she reads the following excerpt. 1800 years ago, a Roman galley with a crew of Jews and Druids got caught in a huge storm off of Carthage. They were swept 1,000 miles off course and ended up on the wrong side of the Horn of Africa. Thinking they were returning to Rome, they sailed deep into the South Pacific and finally ended up colonizing a lightly populated Polynesian island, which they named Waponi Woo. Thus was born the Waponi culture, a mix of Polynesian, Celtic, Hebrew, and Latin influences. The Waponis are known throughout Polynesia to have a peculiar love of orange soda and no sense of direction. I like how they have lore for the Waponis.
Yeah.
Like, there's a
Yeah.
whole, like, they have thought about this. They're like, these are the cultures we are going to, show. And I assume that,
Yes.
like, when we see the Waponis, we might see portions of this culture. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
I also like that it's just like they know orange soda. Why?
Yeah.
Not explained.
Yeah. No, not at all. And that line where it says they have no sense of direction, I think that's another setup for something we'll see later as well that explains something about them. I
Okay.
think it's cleverly sort of just buried in there.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I didn't think anything of that other than yeah, they're just really bad sailors as the Romans were. So like it doesn't
Oh,
surprise me because famously Rome doesn't really have a navy. Like ancient
okay.
Rome never really had a navy. So like, even in mythology and like you look like in the Battle of Carthage and all of that, back there's a fantastic channel called Oversimplified on YouTube. They're not paying me to say any of this, but like it's a fantastic channel and they go through a whole like they have multiple videos all about different things in history, and it's just a simplified version, but like, hey, here's the history of it. So they explain that like Rome never really had good luck in terms
Hmm.
of a naval army. So it does kind of make sense that like, yeah, you don't necessarily have the greatest sense of direction because they aren't known for their power in the navy. The Carthaginians were, and they were the ones that controlled the sea. Rome and the Holy Roman Empire, they were much more known for land battles. and that's how they had their excursions. So like you have Alexander the Great like coming all the way down to, I think it was like present day of Afghanistan is where he got to. And
Wow.
at
I had
that
no idea.
time it was India, because India used to stretch all the way out there, back in BC. So like, yeah. So
Wow.
not sure.
You know a lot of history for an actor.
I have to read a lot of stuff. Sometimes you got to know. So,
Yeah.
and I do really like history. At one point in life, I did kind of want to be a history teacher, and then
Mm-hmm.
that fizzled out. But like, I do just
Right.
enjoy learning about history and understanding, because it's like, like, hey, we need to know history to then be able to do this. And also, like, as an actor, like, if I'm gonna be playing a role, I need to know, like, would this character actually do this? Like, what is their motivation? Like, how would someone in 1800s Russia live? How would someone in, whatever social class I'm in, how would they live? Would they actually make the decisions that they're making? Would they have power? Would they not? Because that'll affect, how I carry myself, my stature, like
Mm-hmm.
depending on who I'm around, like what do I do? So knowing all of this before I go into a rehearsal room allows me to have a sense. And then when I get into a rehearsal room, I already have that base and I can work from there and be like, okay, cool. Like I have this understanding. And then, like, the director might direct me in a certain way. And, that's when we can open it up to conversation. If I'm like, hey, like, based on my research, this isn't my understanding. You may have a different understanding. Like, let's have a conversation about it real quick. Understand, like, just make sure that we're on the same page and then continue. Like, I might not be right. By no means do I claim that, like, I know everything, but, like, this is just what I have found. So I don't feel like this is what I would do, but maybe it is. Maybe there's a specific reason that I just don't see yet. And it's like fair. But yeah, that's why, like, when people are like, oh, acting's easy, I'm like, first of all, it isn't. And second of all, you don't necessarily see all the background work that goes into creating the character, because, you don't see all this research that we're necessarily doing. You don't see all the videos. So, like, my dad jokes around that, like, now with the podcast and everything, my job has turned into reading books and watching movies. So, my dad jokes around and he's like, yeah, we chose the wrong profession. So yeah, it's very fun though, and I absolutely love history. But that was that. We're talking about a film. I don't remember where we
Oh,
are.
right.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. Joe versus the
Yeah,
Volcano.
yeah.
Right.
Joe versus the Volcano. What are we doing? We're having dinner and we're discussing the Polynesians and their love for orange soda. Not the Polynesians. I'm so sorry. They might love orange soda as well. I don't know. But specifically the Waponis. And
Right.
Joe asks Patricia why she spoke so snotty to him back on the dock. And I like that he doesn't clock any of what she just read, or even if he did, he's just like, meh, whatever. Why were you mean to me?
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Yeah, you're right. And it's funny the way you put it, but it almost speaks to that he knows he's going to be dead soon.
Yeah.
So let me find out about a person, about a human. Like, let me connect with another person versus stale history, or.
Yeah. So Patricia says that it's because Joe works for her father. She's angry with her father,
Right.
and it's because he is never around. This is where we learn more that Dad's never around. He's not a very present fatherly figure for the girls. And Joe asks that if you're angry with him and he's never around, why do you work for him? And Patricia exclaims, being like, I don't work for him. Transport of Joe is strictly a favor. And Joe hits her back with, you do favors for people you're mad at? She's just like, I don't work for him. Joe agrees. He decides to let it go. But Patricia then explains that her father offered her the boat if she took Joe to a pony woo. And I was like, okay. And then she reveals he has two. There is, and then she reveals that the other boat is called Tweedledum. So I was like, aha, I was right. I'm still
Yeah,
not sure
you're
about
right.
the food situation on
How
Tweedledum,
about the P?
but
Yeah.
we will figure out if they have a singular P or also a 3-course meal. I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Joe says that, everything's going to be okay. It's fine. And, everything will be fine because now you get a boat. Beautiful sarcasm. Well done, Tom Hanks. And Joe, next scene, is just laying in his bed, and Patricia walks in and asks if it's okay for him. She explains that the boys sleep up in the hall. Dagmar usually sleeps on the deck when the weather's good, so he pretty much has this room to himself, and she's going to be in the little stateroom. Patricia heads out and then immediately comes back in and apologizes for being rude on the dock. Joe says that this is okay, and then Patricia just flat out asks Joe if she slept with her sister. Joe takes his moment, closes his book, and says no, he did not. She asks again, and he's like, no, I didn't. And Patricia asks if he likes to fish. He does, so maybe tomorrow we'll do some fishing. Patricia then points at the light switch, explains how all of that works, explains how the bathroom works, and make sure that he knows how everything works. And, she's just kind of lingering around. And I was like, what do you want to say? Why are you lingering? Like, there's something that needs to happen here. And I couldn't tell if it was you love him, you want to kiss him, which I'm pretty confident that they're going to end up together. Because again, at this point in the film, we're about an hour and 5 maybe into the film, roughly, I would say. And it's only like an hour, 40-minute film. So I'm feeling pretty confident that these are the two that are ending up together. So I was like, why are you lingering? Like, either it's you want to profess your love to him, or you have something else important to say. And it's the latter of the two. And so as she turns off the light, she says, she loves her sister. She knows that she is screwed up. She loves her father, even though she never sees him that much. And it's not so great when she does see him. But she's very nervous about this trip. The father didn't tell her anything, and Joe isn't telling her anything either. But it's actually a lot more than that. And she goes into this whole monologue saying, I've always kept clear of my father's stuff ever since I got out on my own, and now he's pulled me back in. He knew I wanted this boat, and he used it, and got me working for him, which I swore I'd never do. I feel ashamed because I had a price. He named it, and now I know that about myself. I could treat you like I did back out on the dock, but that would be me kicking myself for selling out, which isn't fair to you. Doesn't make me feel any better. I don't know what your situation is, but I wanted you to know what mine is. Not just to explain some rude behavior, but because we're on a little boat for a while. And I'm sick, and you're gonna see that. Like my sister, she's soul sick too. And if you'd slept with her, I would have known something about you. But you didn't, and I believe you. Beautiful little monologue right there. Very, very well delivered by Meg Ryan. Incredibly done. I didn't do it justice by any means, but
You're no Meg Ryan.
not yet. Working on it. Also, I'm sitting in front of a microphone, not like doing the whole scene thingy.
I really meant that you're not blonde and
Oh, wait, I'm not. Oh
yeah,
crap!
an ingenue.
Oh, that was.
I love that little monologue. I love how honest she is, how quickly she is. From this point on the movie forward, it feels it's kind of what you're suspecting. I think it starts feeling more romantic to me, and it's these little moments of honesty between two people that are most exciting to me in real life, and certainly most exciting to see on film. And this is one of them. And I also think it seems like she echoes what Angelica says about not, regretting being connected to her father, beholden to her father in some way. But Patricia's more evolved in the sense that we know she's broken away. She's been pulled back. So she was, unlike Angelica, she was able to escape. She's disappointed in herself that she came back, and as she says, for a price. But she's more aware of it and more aware of what she needs to do, and has shown, at least in the past, she has the ability to do it, move away from her family.
Right. Yeah, she definitely does have that capability. I think it's really beautiful though, because you know, it's that tonal shift. I think this is the tonal shift of the film, like you were saying, where it goes from kind of like this adventure, but now there's a romantic side of this adventure as well. And her opening up, I think it allows Joe to do what he does in a little bit and open up to her. And I don't think Joe would have opened up because we haven't seen Joe open up to anybody yet. We haven't seen him be vulnerable to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, he admitted to Dee Dee what, that he was. It's questionable that he did it when he did it. When, when Dee Dee, they're going all hot and heavy. He tells her, "I'm going to die in a couple of months." But that's not what it's going to be, certainly. Yeah, and it seems like in that sense, this is the first woman of the three, certainly, that he's connected with, or certainly so far, this is the most connected he's been to one of these women.
I agree. Yeah. So Patricia, asks if he's ever slept on a boat before. Nope. And Patricia's like, well, it affects your dreams. And she looks forward to it sometimes, even if the dreams do shake her up. She says goodnight. She heads out. Again, just beautiful scene altogether. So the next day, we're fishing. We found the fish. And Patricia's catching one after another after another. Joe is wearing a very fun pink shirt that has barracudas all over it. I want this shirt. It's just a fun shirt. And Patricia's just reeling in another and another. And Joe's not getting anything. Dagmar's kind of looking at him like, oh no, like this poor soul. He's not going to catch any fish. And Joe finally gets one on. And the others come to help him reel it in because it's a heavy one. And it's like, oh, it's a really big one. And then I was like, they're flailing around so much in the comedy of trying to reel this in. If this was an actual fish, it would have broken free at this point.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like they're falling over. They're like almost losing the pole. Like, like this fish is long gone. But they finally pull it up, and it's a hammerhead shark. See, but like the shark didn't have the hat, so like,
no.
Shoot, you missed an opportunity.
Yeah, this is one of the images they used in the trailer to get people to come see the film. Was this, comedic little montage of him being very Tom Hanks, only to have this giant shark pop out, and then him screaming like he does in a lot of films.
Fair.
At the shark,
I said, this is the silliest costume of the low budgetness that I've seen in this movie so far. It's perfect.
Oh, the shark?
The shark.
Yeah, it looked like a puppet almost.
Yeah,
like,
it legitimately.
Picture somebody's arm inside of it.
It looked like it was either somebody's arm inside of it, or it just looked like they cut off, like it's literally like a shark costume that like goes down to like someone's torso.
Oh.
That like they can just
they
like
just pulled it over.
They can just pull it over, and like their arms are just like snug, and then they just get up there and they're like and like just being a shark.
Action. Right.
Perfect. No notes. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So Patricia confirms that she's going to leave him on the island, and Joe confirms that he is staying for the rest of his life. And they have these paper lanterns on the boat. I didn't notice them earlier if they were there, but they're multiple colors. They're red, green, yellow. Very pretty. Just wanted to point out the beautifulness on the set. It also helps.
Shout out to the set direction.
Designer.
Set
designer. Fantastic job. Beautiful sets here in this film. So Joe asks if Patricia is used to the ocean and to the stars, and Patricia says you never get used to it. That's why she wants the boat is to sail away from things of man. And Joe asks if she believes in God. She believes in herself, meaning that she has the confidence in herself. And Joe says he's been doing some soul searching lately, and I feel like that was probably brought on by her honesty as well, of the soul searching, a little more so. And he found out that he has no interest in himself, and the moment he starts thinking of himself, he starts getting bored out of his mind. And Patricia asks what does interest him, and it's courage. So Patricia's like, okay, are you going to spend the rest of your life on a tiny island in the South Pacific? And Joe explains that until now, he has lived on a tiny island called Staten Island. I laughed at that joke. That was good. And then, he commuted to a job in a shut-up room, and it was pumped with air. There was no sunshine. Despicable people. How dare you talk about Dee Dee like that? Fair, but how dare you? And now that he has distance, he finds that life unbelievable. And it's like, how did I do that?
I love this idea that, he asks her about God. And in this film, they touch on, God. They mention God a couple of times, but they never specify a specific God. It seems more about, sort of an agnostic God. There's a divinity, there's some sort of power beyond. And I love how her response is, I believe in myself, because a lot of the sort of one of the recurring themes of the film seems to be about that idea that we are in charge of our own destinies. And in the very least, she seemed, and again, to her point, she's sick because she didn't follow, she didn't continue to maintain the course or whatever it was, sailing away from her father. She came back, but she at least understands that she's in charge of that. And Joe is only coming to realize that. And I think his comment about I'm bored with myself is sort of this indication that maybe earlier on in the film, he was doing some introspection, but he's done with that. Now he wants to take action. Done with sort of, checking out who I am or whatever. Now I need to just act. And again, I think that speaks to this idea of, following a path of your dreams or your goals. And every step you take is acting towards it. Don't get caught up in the self-doubt and the that negative talk that we give ourselves. Stay the course.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Patricia says that her father says the whole world is asleep. Everyone you know, everyone you see, everyone you talk to, and only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant and total amazement. Beautiful. Joe gets very, very close to Patricia and explains the situation. And that he has 6 months to live, the Waponis need a human sacrifice or the island will sink, and Patricia starts moving in like she wants to kiss him, but then as he's revealing this information after he finishes, she just jumps up and she's like, "What?" And
Yeah.
he's just like, "You're not gonna make me say that again, are you?" Perfect. Great line. Joe asks Patricia if she's gonna say anything, and she's just like, "I don't know what to say." Again, the sisters are very alike, but also I feel like most people wouldn't know what to say here.
Right. But instead of trying to, sort of bullshit her way through it, she just tells the truth. I don't know what to say. And I think she's a little Dee at this moment, too. She almost seems a little bit Angelica and a little bit Dee with how she reacts, because it scares her that he, is going to die in a few months.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Like, Angelica never found out, like, this is what's going to happen. But she was still, like, fascinated that, like, he's going to a Pony Island. Why are you going? And then when Dee found out, like, she had a similar reaction of, like, I need to go. Like, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
Like, I got to step away. And she just says, you tell me you're dying. You're jumping into a volcano. My mind is blank. Which I have an issue with. Because, in my entire existence, I have never known a woman's mind to be blank. Men,
oh, no.
yes.
Okay. Oh, I see.
So
I have no response to that.
Yeah, there's a fantastic video online of like a doctor talking about this as well, and it's like a comedy thing. Definitely, but just being like, men have this very special box and it's called a nothing box, and our favorite box is the nothing box. It's why we can do something as meaningless as fishing for hours on end, just sitting there, just reel, come back in, cast away, reel, come back in. Nothing's happening. We don't even have to catch a fish, but we're having the time of our lives. So, listeners, if anyone's interested, I'll leave a link to the video in the description. But it's just an interesting thing. I don't know. That's just my experience, but everyone to their own. But I'm just like, cool, fair enough. So Joe understands this, and Patricia says, "Good night. I'll see you in the morning." And it's the next morning. I'm assuming it's the next morning because it's not said. It might be later that night. I don't know. Joe goes into the control room, and we learn that there is a typhoon warning and that they are in for a blow. And that is where we're going to stop this episode right before we find out what happens with a typhoon.
I'm waiting. I can't wait to find out.
Well, we gotta wait a week. So, that's where we're at. Is there anything that we've missed, Will, in the portion that we've covered that today in this episode that like you wanted to point out, like anything there that like we haven't already touched on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we've been very thorough in our discussion so far.
I agree. It's been a lovely discussion. Will, if people want to find you on the internet doing your show and various other things, where can they do that? How can they find you and follow you and see all the cool stuff that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, it's called 1980s Now. Every week we chat about 1980s pop culture, but more importantly, how it's continued to influence our media today and our lives. It's on. You can find us on any podcast platform. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, all those socials as 1980s Now.
Wonderful. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining, and you're going to be our guest for next week's episode, as well as we finish up our discussion on Joe versus the Volcano. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss it. If it's anything like this episode, oh boy, we have more thoughts for the next one. That's a guaranteed. And thank you so much for listening, Will. Thank you so much again. And listeners, until next week, I'll catch y'all later. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale. Post Finale is created, hosted, and produced by me, Ankit Madhira. Our editor is Pranav Nair. The music is by Ankit Madhira and Megan Hutcherson, and the art is by Jarid Rother. If you are all enjoying this episode and want to gain access to more bonus content, you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/coopforge and signing up for any of the tiers. You get loads of different bonus content, such as notes and commentary that we have as we're watching the films, as well as some bonus audio, some bonus videos, and ad-free episodes, early access if we get them done early, and different things like that. All of that can be found at patreon.com/coopforge, and that's patreon.com/co_opforge. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, that's great as well. Tell a friend about the show. Just reach out and be like, hey, you love films, or hey, you need an excuse to watch some more films. Check out the show called Post Finale. The host is an actor, and he's funny and silly, confused most of the time, but they have interesting discussions about some popular films that I think you would really enjoy. It really does help us out a lot. Be sure to talk about us on social media at Post Finale Pod on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also follow us at CoopForge, that's CO_OPFORGE, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And there we post content not just from Post Finale, but also from the other shows hosted here on Co-op Forge, which are Flip the Scripts and Seattle Across the Pond. So a lot of fun things can be found over there on our social media. It really, really does help us out a lot. Thank you to everyone who has already done this. Thank you to everyone who will do this in the future. It really does mean a lot to us, and it helps us create better content for you, the listeners, as we grow. It really does help, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale, and I can't wait until next week. And until then, I'll catch y'all later.